This is Hunter Muse
And this is Chris Snipes, and you are listening
to The Melt.
Hello, can you see and hear me?
I can hear you.
Can't see you, but I can hear you.
Oh, let me put the video on. That would help.
I can smell you, strangely enough.
Oh,
You smell me. Oh, right. That my sweet savor.
Oh, I love it. How are you, Robert?
I'm okay. I'm sweetly savoring.
How were your travels?
Oh, it's a bore going back and forth, but then on the other hand, sitting still is also a bore.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So either way, life sucks, you know.
oh my God.
Come on.
That's a good way to start it.
I don't
Oh
believe
yeah,
you
I
think
would
that.
start on a high note, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
We can only work up from here.
Now, whose eye is that in the background on the wall?
That's Escher.
MC Escher.
Oh, that's by Escher. Oh, right.
Yeah.
No, I've been to his house.
Oh, wonderful.
No kidding.
Oh, years and years ago. He lived in a very quiet residential town in the Netherlands called Baarn, spelled Baarn. They have two A's
Mhm.
because they think one A is not enough, you know, what the Dutch. And so he lives in this, it's a kind of bungalow.
Mhm.
And the thing is that he was a very sort of very ordinary person, a suburban type of person. Even in on a beach with nothing on, you wouldn't have looked at him. I hope. At least you, Chris.
Interesting. But did he, well, I mean, was his house sort of ordinary too? He didn't have fine works of art around.
Oh no, he had died already.
Oh, okay, gotcha, gotcha. I don't
He
know.
died, he died ages ago. The person who's carried on his work in the scientific sense is Roger Penrose.
Hmm.
Professor Roger Penrose of Oxford, who got the Nobel Prize not so long ago. It took long enough. He should have had it years before, but still, if you live long enough, you can either get bashed in the face or bemedaled.
To continue with the vibe that we've.
Or both.
You see, we're coming up one notch.
Yes,
Get
that's
a-
true.
you might get a medal.
And happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, now that I'm 16, I can kiss my wife at last.
Yes.
Finally, you can make an honest woman of her.
Yes. Oh, well, she's always been honest. But
Make an honest man of yourself then.
oh, yes, absolutely. I've been hoping to do that all my life. What about you two? Are you both honest? Are you an
Yeah,
item?
absolutely. Are we an item?
You're itemizing?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was Stanley Kubrick's word that he invented. Every time a starlet would go out with a star, he'd say that, oh, they're itemizing.
Yes. We are. Checks and balances.
Yes, we are. Day by day, we're itemizing.
And she wears the trousers, I expect.
Oh, for sure.
I wear the onesie.
Oh, right. We men have to know our place. We have to do as we're told and behave.
Yes. We're just we're supposed to be the keepers of the house, but really we're not. We're just we just play one on TV, really.
I think you're the builders of the house and the
Yeah, there we
women
go.
are the keepers.
I like your motto, trust the science is as a euphemism for trust the system.
Hmm. You
Certainly
understand.
true.
I figured you might relate to that.
I do. I do. I think I'm a first cousin to that one.
Well, I would love if you would be so kind to sort of maybe continue with the what we started or what you started talking about sort of spontaneously towards the end of our last conversation, which were your all of your experiences in the place that you sort of called the in-between place, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
find highly fascinating.
Well, yes, I can tell you more about that. What have you got on your fingers?
Me? Oh, I've got my children's names.
You mean you can't remember them otherwise?
I can't, no. I go, oh darn it. Oh, Nico, yes. Oh, Arvo, yes.
Arvo sounds like something that Elon Musk would invent.
Oh no. I named him after an Estonian classical composer, Arvo Pärt.
Oh, yes, yes, I met him. Very
Oh,
nice.
wow. Is he somber like his music?
He's sort of an ordinary person.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call him somber, but he's not jumping up and down, exciting type. I met him in London years ago when they were performing his music. He was in the audience, and he was a friend of somebody I was with, and so I got introduced to him, and I just said a few words. We didn't engage in deep conversation about ancient Greek musical modes or the diatonic scale or anything of that kind.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I really like.
He was a very nice, pleasant man.
Uh-huh.
You wouldn't have noticed him, but you wouldn't have not noticed him. He's one of those people you notice, but you don't take notice of.
Mhm. Yeah, he looks like he could be a wizard. His long beard
Oh no,
and
no, he didn't have anything like that.
oh,
But
really?
no, he had dark hair when I met him. I expect
Mhm.
he's gray by now. If he's still alive, is he?
I don't know actually. I haven't
So,
checked on him.
so you're into Latvian music then?
That's really the only person that I know of. I'm not into that area of music per se, but his music in particular, I don't even remember how I came across it, but I really uh, kind of resonated with it.
So
I
now
like.
don't forget, it's Nico and Arvo.
Mhm.
Don't forget.
Yeah, Nico and Arvo. Okay, Nico's the oldest one, right?
I think so.
Very good.
Woo! Feel like my cue cards.
I think
Yes,
she
yes,
answers to
yes.
that at least. The
Yes,
oldest one does.
Well, okay, so you want to talk about some serious stuff? Okay.
let's do it.
Um, because I like being frivolous, but that's not permitted on podcasts.
Oh, sure it is.
Oh,
It's
really?
encouraged.
Well, so now I have to make it clear that in describing some of my many experiences, which would be called paranormal, whatever that means, um, these are purely subjective experiences.
Of course.
Nobody has to believe a word I say, especially if they don't believe in that kind of thing. Why watch the podcast? Sorry, I don't mean to lose you any subscribers, but
Oh no.
um, the there is no way to verify what I'm saying that I know of, um, and it's not susceptible to scientific proof. It's just me talking, and I might be out of my mind. I might be a fantasist. I might be a well-intentioned person who just doesn't understand things. And so you don't have to believe anything I say, nor am I trying to push any theories or ideas. I'm just telling you things that I've experienced.
Got it.
So that's my disclaimer.
Okay.
So that I don't get sued by any ghosts or spirits. Misrepresentation.
Mm.
Know that one of these days, if the barriers come down, we might find disembodied spirits hiring lawyers ambulance chasers, no doubt. Of course, if they were ambulance chasers, they certainly got there too late.
Hearse chasers.
Yeah, oh God, yes. So now, why don't I first tell you that I've I've often had these kind of paranormal experiences of various kinds, but not that often. And I don't seek them out, and I don't try to have them. They
Mhm.
always come unbidden. And when I was younger, I occasionally had some prophetic dreams, um, which came true. The longest period of time in the future that something came true that was in a prophetic dream that I had back in the 1970s was 11 years.
Mhm.
So that was a big shock to me because it proved to me that there does seem to be some kind of way to know the future. And although it was more symbolical and it wasn't precise as if you're really seeing it, but the information was correct. And I sometimes get future flashes, as I call them. They're just flashes, and I get a vision of something that hasn't happened yet.
Mhm.
And then they come true. They could come true a month later, or 3 months later, or 3 years later, something like that. But one thing I've noticed, and this is very important, um, the vision I have is never absolutely accurate. In other words, it's like an AI attempt to create a future event because there's some details that are wrong. And I've noticed that although these things do happen, the details are always wrong. So it's not like you've got your camera there in the future and sending a transmission back into the past. Absolutely not like that. It's like an AI attempt to create the image of what will happen.
Mhm.
And it could be a detail of like different color wallpaper, something like that. They're never absolutely accurate. And that's a key point because I'm not getting an actual direct vision of the future. I'm getting an AI-like projection of an image of what will happen in the future according to the predictions of whatever is predicting this, which isn't me. So I mentioned that detail because anybody who's trying to come up with any kind of scientific theory to explain such things needs to know that the images are always imprecise. They're almost right, but not quite. There's always a detail that's wrong. So I hope that anybody who gives serious thought to these matters will take that as a warning as to there are certain theories that we cannot adopt, namely that you're seeing a direct vision of the future. Now, I did have a friend, Air Marshal Sir Victor Goddard, who died long ago, is a great friend of ours. He actually gave the speech at our wedding. Um, who he had paranormal experiences, and one of them was the subject of a 1950s film called "The Night My Number Came Up."
Mm.
Who wants to see that? You can easily get a copy, and that's based upon his real experience, which he told me about many times. But in terms of seeing a vision of the future, I'll tell you what happened with him. This took place before the Second World War began, when he was flying over in Scotland, trying to find an air base, uh, which is now Edinburgh Airport, in thick fog and couldn't see. And of course, there was no radar and he was having a lot of trouble. This is the 30s, you see.
Mhm.
And he didn't know what he was going to do. And suddenly the fog lifted and it was the completely bright, blinding sunshine. He was astounded because he thought, what happened to the fog? And he looked down and he could see the runway and he could see some fighter planes, which he didn't recognize, sitting on the runway with men in overalls servicing them, their engines and whatever. And but those uniforms weren't familiar either. And then suddenly he was back in the fog again. Now he wrote about this later and called it the slip through time, because what happened was that many years later, when the war got going, the uniforms were changed, and the men in the overalls started to wear the ones that he'd seen in the vision,
Hmm.
and the planes that he didn't recognize by then had been invented, built, and existed. Now, Sir Victor was 100% honest. He was greatly interested in researching these things, and I wrote his obituary in the independent newspaper, which is on my researchgate.net website.
Mhm.
If anyone wants to download it, it's been downloaded, I think, something like 700 times, or something like that, because it records the fascinating historical information that he was the one who came up with the idea for the small boats that went to Dunkirk.
Hmm.
This was previously unrecorded. In the whole story he told me, and I tell it in that obituary, which is why people are interested in downloading the obituary, because it's a piece of history that nobody otherwise knew.
Mhm.
So that's enough about Sir Victor, although I could talk about him for 2 hours. So this is the slipping through time thing. Now, I don't really have that except with these sudden future flashes, which are very rare, and they aren't necessarily deeply meaningful, and I don't have them about the future of the world or anything grand like that. It's always something to do with my own life that will be occurring.
Mhm.
What are the
Those,
circumstances typically that these things happen? Is it between like waking and sleeping or driving?
no, these can come when I'm awake.
Mhm.
It's just a flash. All my other things happen when I'm sleeping. So now, well, no, they don't all. Actually, so now here's a weird one. If just a few years ago, I was sitting in my office in London. It was nighttime. It was maybe 9 or 10 at night. And I was sitting with a young woman. We were talking about Egyptology, actually. And my wife wasn't there. It was just the two of us. And suddenly we both saw, I say saw, we saw it telepathically, because not with our optic nerves, a giant spinning cylinder entered the room. And it went up through the ceiling. This was an old building built in 1685, actually. And, it had a high ceiling. So I would say the ceiling is 15 feet high, and I would say that the cylinder was 20 to 30 feet high, because we could sort of see it like through the ceiling, as it were, as projecting itself in that way. But it was hazy and silvery and shimmery, just as my dog was 3 days after her death, when I saw her sitting on top of her grave guarding her body.
Mm.
Silvery and shiny. That was in the garden. And this is silvery and shiny and shimmering. But it was very obvious that it was a spinning cylinder, and it had it was like transparent. You could see different levels of spinning within it. So that and that they were going two ways. It was what they call uh, contra rotation. So one is going one way, one's going the other way. That's called contra rotation, because it's going both ways in separate layers. And and then the damn thing spoke to us. The cylinder spoke to us. Well, I can tolerate anything, no matter how strange. And so, okay, there's this cylinder and it's speaking to me. All right, gotcha. Um, so And I could speak to it, and it was a conscious entity, uh, a conscious cylinder. And so uh, I said, "Who are you?" And he was very definitely male. He said, "I am Orthar." Orthar? That's got to be initials, isn't it? That's got to be uh, Orthar.
Mhm.
Yes, he said. So I got to thinking. I said, what does it stand for? Because if I hadn't asked him, he wouldn't have told me, because these beings like to be asked things.
Mhm.
Um, he said it stands for Orbital Reconnaissance Terrestrial Hugging Automated Rover. That's my name, but I'm known as Orthar. Now, this is in English,
Uh,
understand?
uh,
The initials are abbreviations of English words.
yes.
So I don't know uh, what that means. Why wasn't he in French or German or something? But no, he was very much given an English name, English language name.
Mhm.
And he made it clear that he circulates around the globe doing surveillance and reconnaissance as an automated rover. So he was like an AI conscious entity. An intelligent computer, in other words,
Mhm.
but sufficiently advanced to be able to hold a conversation and be reasonable. And so I said, well, that's very nice. And so then my friend and I decided to ignore him because he just was sitting there and he didn't say why. And so he was out there for 3 days. I went home and came back the next morning. He was still there. Olivia didn't see him. I don't think I even told her about it. And and then the next day he was there. He was there for 3 days. And I thought, now if he's an orbital reconnaissance, terrestrial hugging automated rover, what's he doing sitting here for 3 days? He should be out there doing
Roving.
his job.
Yes.
And he was trying to download my thoughts and things, and so examining my mind, as you might say. Um, he was trying to figure me out and get more information about me. He wanted to know more directly from being right there and downloading from my mind more about me. He'd been told to do this.
Mm.
I was targeted for this in-person surveillance and communication if possible. Those would have been his instructions. By whom, I've no idea. And he didn't say. I, I'm I'm incredibly blasé about these things, and I really didn't think to say who sent you or who do you work for. Um, because frankly, I was a bit annoyed because I was busy doing my things and I didn't really want this telepathic cylinder hanging around for 3 days like that without telling me why. But I mean, it was obvious he was studying me, and so then finally he went away.
Strange.
I report that because it really happened, um, and such things apparently do really exist. Why they're given English names, I can't imagine, and known by initials like they do in the military, sort of thing. That's what they would do. They always use initials for everything, don't they? And it was as if he was being operated by the military. But what military? You
Mhm.
know? But he was operating in the English language, and there he was in London. But he does go over the whole Earth, and terrestrial hugging means is at ground level. See,
Mhm.
that's what that means.
Okay.
And in other words, he wasn't like going at a satellite altitude or even a helicopter
Mhm.
altitude. He was going basically at ground level or ground level-ish, and seeing what's going on down on the ground, as it were.
Mm. When did
And
this happen?
oh, well, that was a good 10 years ago, I guess,
Mhm.
because it was in our old office when we now have a different office nearby. And so that's that strange story, and I don't know what to make of it, but I put it out there. If anybody has any great ideas, that would be interesting. But that's one of my strange tales, and that's my subjective experience. And of
We
course, I may have imagined it, but the girl also saw the thing.
Sure. You've mentioned that the clouds, who I always forget the name of the person who sort of discovered them. The
Kordylewski.
Yes, sometimes send drones to
Yes,
Earth.
yes.
Yeah, to
This
collect.
could certainly have been
Mhm.
from that source, because I believe they send the glowing UFOs as plasma drones,
Mhm.
and this was obviously made of plasma. This entity, because it was like seeing a spirit, like my dead dog.
Mm.
Uh, and so it was definitely made of plasma. So it probably came from the Kordylewski clouds. Yeah, it would be one of their many um, surveillance uh, craft.
Mhm.
And as I think I told you in our previous chat, that the Kordylewski clouds are bound to be carrying out the most extensive possible surveillance.
Yes.
And for some reason, they suddenly decided that I was of particular interest at that point. Of course, at that time, I wasn't writing about the Kordylewski clouds yet, and I wasn't writing about plasma yet. But if if they can predict in their future flashes a sort of AI version of something that's going to occur, they would have known that I was heading towards writing my book,
Hmm.
that I would write that book. After all, they would see my library. I've got literally thousands of physics books, and in fact, there they are. Um, they fill the room. They don't quite go to the ceiling, but though I have far too many for the shelves. I have so many books that I've extracted all the mathematics books and I put them in a separate room. That's the mathematics room,
Mhm.
which is full of mathematics books, in order to reduce the quantity in here, which is the physics books, strictly the physics ones.
Mm.
I thought of trying to separate out gravitation from quantum theory, but it's hopeless. Basically, I do have some things readily accessible, like fractals and so on, and certain authors, Prigogines on the shelf. But you see, what I do is I just get information from 1,000 different sources and remember it all and put it down. I don't take notes.
Hmm.
When I did my book on the history of 3,000 years of Chinese science and technology, a book called The Genius of China,
Hmm.
I had to read 12 million words and remember everything, including the page numbers, without writing a single physical note. And then I sat down and wrote the book. So this is my ability.
Super
And I
cool.
also have a psychometric ability for obtaining information. In other words, even when I was a university student at my university, where there were open stacks of 3 million books or whatever it was, I would go to, I would just go to a certain stack. I'd turn right. I'd go along to a certain point. It would be on the left. It would be on that shelf. I'd pull the book out without even looking. It would be the book that I needed. I'd go to the correct page.
Wild.
And only because I can do that kind of thing, which I call direct contact with information space,
Mhm.
Mm.
have I been able to bring all this kind of stuff together in these books, which which synthesize and unify things from disparate authors and disparate scientists who don't know each other and have never even heard of each other. And I can see how the work of one relates to the work of the other, even though they've never communicated, because I'm a kind of bringing it all together type of person.
Mhm.
I
To see,
looked I looked up your psychic phenomena book and I found one copy on Abe Books for over $600.
you mean the Open to Suggestion book?
Yes,
Oh God, is it selling for that kind of price?
there's only one.
Oh, well, time to start saving up your pennies.
Exactly.
What
We're gonna Klarna it where we can pay it off a
you
payment.
need a loose change jar,
It's
Exactly.
like,
and you put the quarters and the nickels and things in there, and over a period of the next 30 years.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
I'm sorry to hear that it's only one copy and it's $600. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, this is the trouble with books. I once, just briefly, had some of my books were not properly available in secondhand, and I've seen them priced at $4,000 each, including that one actually, and my book, The Crystal Sun. But you can get The Crystal Sun without any trouble, secondhand copies. Anyway, that's shocking news. I'm very sorry to hear that.
Well,
Well,
that's a bargain at
Yeah, exactly.
600
That's
if
steal.
the other's going for four.
Yeah.
well, that was only temporarily. That guy didn't sell them, and he lowered the price.
Mhm.
Mm.
Gotcha.
It was a try on that
Yes.
dealer. But in terms of my book, A New Science of Heaven, promo time, the book everyone needs, your guide to the future. Heaven. Oh, there he goes. There you go. Now, the hardback is well out of print, but there are many paperbacks because the publisher told me the other day that they've just done their seventh paperback reprint.
Oh, wonderful.
Wonderful.
The sixth was only in November. So
Mm.
it's
Incredible.
actually accelerating in
That's
its
great.
spread, which
Lovely.
is good. I'm completely indifferent to making money from books or anything of that kind. I
Mhm.
look upon earning money as a vulgar thing to pursue.
Very
So
worldly.
my thoughts are higher than that. But the important thing is to get the message out.
Yes.
Mhm.
So now let me tell you about the other world contacts, which only occur in my sleep.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I want to preface it by saying also that I'm by no means the only one who has these experiences, because um, many people in their sleep go what I call dreamwalking to the other world. It's just that they have total amnesia for it
Mhm.
when they wake up, and they don't have any idea they've done it. And because I've seen them, I've seen other dreamwalkers sort of going along, like sort of looking like pale ghosts, as it were, approaching the other world. And many of them, this is not a rare thing. It's just that nobody remembers. And I remember a fair amount. I try not to remember because I don't want to, but I've been told I have to. So now this has been going on for about 30 years. I'll just take one step back and say that before this happened, for about 20 years, every night when I would go to sleep, I would be entertained in my sleep by the same thing. It was like a direct feed from a galactic probe that was probing for moons and solid planets. And so it was silent, no sound or anything. It was just this probe going through space, and you'd see all these moons and planets, and some of them were glittering, and many of them were dark and boring. I remember one that was brightly glittering in red, as if the whole thing was made of rubies or something. But uh, and they're always different. New moons, new planets, all different from one another, big ones, little ones. And it was just like being a direct feed of this exploring satellite that's looking specifically for solid objects in space.
Mhm.
I didn't see gaseous things. I never saw stars. It was just these solid objects in space. And um, and so for about 20 years, I would have that every night. That would be kind of like background music, to help me sleep.
Mm.
And I always thought it was strange, but there it was, and I didn't know what it was, but it came every night, and there again, I was rather indifferent to it in the way I was to the spinning cylinder. Sort of slightly annoyed by the spinning cylinder because he was taking up my time. So now that all changed about 30 years ago when I haven't had the direct feed from the galactic probe since then. I suddenly became a dream walker. Um, and I didn't really know what was going on at first. It took me a while to get oriented because uh, I'd be in a deep sleep and I would suddenly find myself instantaneously. There's no traveling involved in um, in this other world. And and if I were to be awakened, it instantaneously, split second, you're back in your body again,
Mm.
because that's happened many a time over the years. So now, what is this other world thing? Well, I was I had a guide, a female guide, who always stands behind my right shoulder. And once in a while, she doesn't. Once in a while, she emerges, like when she's giving instructions to one of the what they call the receivers, which I'll tell you what they are in a moment. She's got quite a lot of authority, and she has permission to go anywhere, to take me anywhere
Mhm.
in this middle region. Now, the other world, this all could be fantasy, but I'll tell you why I think it's not,
Mhm.
apart from the fact that I've experienced it. Um, the other world for humans on planet Earth, that is, because there must be many other worlds, um, is divided into three parts. Just as Julius Caesar, in his history of the wars in Gaul, says in his first sentence, which I'm sure you know by heart, Omnia Gallia in tres partes divisa est, which means all Gaul is divided into three parts. That's his first sentence. Just a curious coincidence, because the other world appears, at least for as it appertains to humans after death and before birth, is divided into three parts. Now, the part you absolutely do not want to go to and cannot visit because there's no way out is what we in English call hell. In French, it's enfer. In Italian, it's inferno. Um, the Jews call it Gehenna. It's not Sheol, which is the other world, but not the hell part. The hell part is called Gehenna. The ancient Greeks called it Tartarus, not Hades. Hades is like Sheol. It's the other world, but it's not the hell part. The hell part was called Tartarus, and that's where beings are confined. The Titans are meant to be confined down there. It's always down there, by the way. It's always down there, and it is literally down there, as I'll explain. But in the other world, it's universally called the pit. So that's the general name that everybody uses in the other world, if they know about it. It's known as the pit,
Mhm.
and it is a pit, and and you can't get out. Hence, it wasn't possible for me to visit it, nor would anyone wish to, because it's it's reserved for people who are irredeemably evil. And that's a surprising tiny percentage of humanity because um, um, you'd be amazed how many people don't get sent to the pit. No matter how wicked they are, they may have been murderers, done all kinds of terrible things. If they have even any spark left in them, which means they could be, even in theory, redeemable, they don't go to the pit. The only people who go to the pit are the irredeemably evil, because there's no point letting them continue to roam about, because they can't be redeemed. And so I was told that on average, throughout human history, about 5% of people had gone to the pit,
Mm.
which I think is a very low percentage. And it is, in my opinion, a very low percentage. I was also told that the percentage has gone up in the past 100 years or so because evil has been spreading so much that it had gone up to 7% and it was in danger of reaching 8. And that this was looked upon as a terrible, terrible crisis by those in charge. So I was given that information. I was also told um, that they try never, never, never to send anyone to the pit. That's looked upon as a complete failure of the system. Every single person who's committed to the pit makes them very, very unhappy, the people who run this enterprise, because they're losing a soul. And their job is to save souls, not lose them.
Mm-hmm.
So they get very depressed by that. Anyway, I was told that the terrible torment that takes place down there is so much worse than anything that's been remotely conceived by anyone here on Earth that it far exceeds the most fantastic imaginings of how horrible hell could be. It's much, much worse. And and it never ends and you can never get out. So that at all costs, I do urge all the evil people who might be watching, which I'm sure is zero for your podcast, if you're very wicked, cool it, because if you're completely wicked, you've had it. But if you're only just mostly wicked, you still have a chance. And I've seen that, what happens to people at that level. I'll come to that. So my guide, um, well, first of all, when you die, um, you you have all the what the near-death experiences describe. You generally go through a tunnel and there's a light at the end, and so all of that. Because reincarnation is the basis of this whole system, you see. We all existed before we were born, and we all exist after we die. And many people become completely, wildly euphoric after they die because they realize they still exist,
Mm-hmm.
which having been convinced that of the extermination at death theory, which is false. And suddenly there they are, floating up and looking down on their body, and they think, oh my God, I'm still alive. How did that happen? And they become very euphoric. And of course, they don't have any physical illnesses anymore. So there is no such thing as a physical illness in the other world. It's all over. If you were blind, you get your eyes back. If you were deaf, you get your ears back. If you lost your legs in Afghanistan, you get your legs back. You can't get cancer. You can't even have a cold. It's all over. The whole physical thing is all over. But of course, there is a downside to the physical things being over. Nobody eats or drinks.
Mhm.
So it's a really rotten deal for chefs.
And foodies.
But what does survive is the aroma of food. So
Mm.
the only physical sense, I say physical in quotes, that survives death is a smell, a kind of smell, not the same as physical smell through the olfactory nerves, but still aromas can be perceived. And I think the ancient people, their shamans and seers and so on, who went into trances and learned all the stuff that I'm telling you now. This is not for the first time. It's just rare in our times. They knew all this. and that this was the basis of burning the incense.
Hmm.
And why would anybody burn incense either for the gods or for the God? Because I'm Church of England and High Church. They have incense. I used to be the incense boy to hold the frankincense. I used to like the smell of frankincense. I still do. And so, what's all that about? What's the incense for? But you see, you can still smell certain aromas in the other world if you're entirely plasma being. This is an interesting and very weird confirmation of an ancient rite of burning incense, which, and the Catholics all have incense because the Church of England is similar to the Catholic Church. We don't have a pope. Um, I understand in America, it's split into two. It's now split into the Anglican Church on the one hand and the Episcopalian Church on the other. I have no idea what the difference between them is. They used to be one and they split into, I don't know what that means. But they're also known, I think the Anglican Church like to call themselves Anglo-Catholics. They're practically like Roman Catholics, but without a pope. I'm sure this is very boring to most people who are not remotely interested in either of those churches, but still, I mention it just as information. So, because it relates to the incense,
Mhm.
and the Buddhists, they're burning incense the whole time.
Yeah.
You can be totally impoverished, having got a penny to your name, and you'll spend that penny if you're a devout Buddhist buying incense sticks, which you'll take and burn and as you kneel down in a Buddhist temple, which I've seen many times because I've spent so much time in China where this happens every day.
Mhm.
And it was one of my hobbies to go and see all the old temples. I visited 52 different temples in Beijing alone. Some of them weren't even known to exist. I found them.
Wow.
I'm a bit, you might think it's very amusing. My name is Temple.
Yes.
Mm.
And I go to China, I spend all my time searching for temples. No relation, I assure you. And when I go to Egypt, where we've just been sponsoring the cleaning of an astronomical ceiling at the Temple of Esna on the Nile for the past 7 years. Um, when Olivia and I go to Egypt, our Egyptian friends, even if they've known us for some time, they're still giggling and laughing. And when I meet a new Egyptian, they say, "What? You mean your name is Temple? What you're called Temple? Temple is your name." Because this is so, because temples are important for tourism.
Yes.
So I sometimes offer myself as a tourist attraction, but nobody's taken. But I look weather worn enough, don't you think? I mean, and I suppose I could be, uh, given a touch of extra paint here and there but reconstruction and
Some spackling.
missing bits replaced, like plants and no, it's terribly funny studying temples when you're called Temple. It never ceases to raise a laugh. And so we were talking about the incense, and um, I'll tell you more about the sense of smell in a moment, but I just want to finish the bit about the pit. So my guide, this woman, I'm not allowed to see her face, um, presumably because I might recognize her. Anyway, she's dressed very plainly in a long sort of kind of robe, nothing fancy, no jewelry, nothing, just totally plain. She seems to be about 30 years old, but of course that's how she projects herself. She's probably 30,000 years old. And she's a very high-ranking entity. Uh, she has never told me who she is, but she guides me around and speaks to me telepathically. Everything's telepathic, obviously. And uh, her face is blotted out, but not. You know how in television news reporting you get the face blotted out of somebody who's accused but not convicted of a crime. You get the blotch on the face that looks quite a mess. It's not that kind of blotting out. It's a vacuity. It's a nothingness. There is actually nothing where the face should be for me to perceive. It's there, but I see it as a nothingness because I'm not allowed to see her face. And she has long hair because I've seen her step forward a few times. And on this occasion, I'm about to tell you about. So she took me down. She said, I'm going to show you how irredeemably evil people are consigned to the pit. Now, I need to explain that they have these automated spiritual robots, you might call them, in the other world, who work in the afterlife, and they're known as the receivers. They're called the receivers because they're always there whenever a new person dies. They usually meet members of the family and or whatever. There's a reception greeting, and there's always a couple of receivers there standing off to the side, but you don't notice them necessarily because you don't recognize them, and they're kind of weird because they're about between 8 and 10 feet tall, and they look like nightclub bouncers, you might say, because these are big guys. They're all male, and they're by big, I don't mean muscular or fat or anything of that kind. They're just big, present, you know, and they look like it's very obvious that you do not mess with them. And they're completely placid. They never show any emotion because they're not permitted to have any emotion. They're programmed to be emotionless. Otherwise, they couldn't possibly carry out their duties. They'd go mad.
Yeah.
And so these are intentionally programmed, emotionless, plasma automated. Well, you could call them plasma robots, I guess. But they're all over the place. I mean, they don't put themselves forward. They're only there when they're needed. But, you know, there's plenty of them. And their name is the receivers, based upon the fact that they essentially receive souls, although they don't throw their arms around them or greet them or anything. They just stand there silently, making sure everything's going okay. And then they might lead them on from the reception party to their destination. And they make it plain. I'm trying to remember what I've ever actually been spoken to by a receiver, and I don't think so. I think they don't speak, but they make their intentions clear. Well, I don't know quite how. They're very strange to behold, but they all look alike. So they don't. You wouldn't know receiver one from receiver two because they just look like clones of each other.
Dressed the same.
So even the
Yeah.
people that are going to the pit, they are all they all go through this process.
Oh, they've been through the process, but this comes later. This is after. I think that when you get somebody whose rating is that low, they have to convene some kind of tribunal situation
Mhm.
because, you know, the decision has to be made. Is this person truly irredeemably evil? Before they finally, I think there has to be a consensus. Some sort of committee or something has to make this judgment. They can't leave it to a single higher entity to make the decision that that's the end of somebody. It has to be a committee, which I've never seen, and it hasn't been described to me. But I do know it's a consensus decision that takes place after they die and they've been received, which may be quite a horrible experience for them just being received. You may get all sort of demonic phenomena taking place then. I wouldn't know, but they do get a final judgment. But nobody else is judged in a tribunal. They haven't got time for that kind of thing. It's all automated. But the ones who are going to be sent to the pit do get a tribunal, and unfortunately, it seems it's almost always the confirmation of what they greatly and mostly fear, that they're going to have to lose somebody
Mhm.
because they just hate losing somebody, hate it. And it's like when Jesus was talking about the 99 and the one,
Mhm.
he'd go for the one. This cannot bear, the divine entities cannot bear to lose somebody. That's the worst thing that can happen to them, is that they think of it being as their failure. That's how they view it. So, okay, so I was taken into this cave. It was just like a cave, as if it carved out of the solid rock. Of course, there is no rock. This is all plasma. But it was exactly like a cave carved out of solid rock and lit lit by sort of red yellow light, as if it was like flame or something. There was no flame, but I mean, it wasn't. It was a cavern. And I remember remarking upon how the walls appeared to be stone, carved out of stone, as I've seen in Egyptian situations, for instance, underground. But that's what it was like. And so there are these big, hunky receivers there, and several of them, because this is a very serious moment. And two people were being consigned to the pit, lying side by side on two separate beds, with their feet towards the wall and their heads out towards us. She said, I want you to see how this process takes place, and you must tell the public. You have to tell about this. You must tell people. That's the only reason I'm showing it to you, and of course for you to know. But you must tell people about this. My inclination is not to, but she keeps telling me I have to tell people. Most insistent that people have to know, the public. I mean, it doesn't matter about me knowing. It's as if I know all this stuff anyway. But she's telling me I have to communicate this. It's very important that people know how things really work. An example of reports which I believe to be false are those by Robert Monroe.
Mm.
Um, I read his books, thinking this will be interesting, fill in some of the gaps in my knowledge, and all of it struck me as false notes. I don't think that he is faking it. He just got it all wrong. I can tell you based on my experience, all of the Robert Monroe books are wrong. They
Interesting.
don't have that much attention to individuals, with people sitting around and discussing their future lives in that kind of detail. There's no time for that. He exaggerated that, whether knowingly or no unknowingly. I have no idea. I'm sure he was a very nice man and he meant well. I'm just saying that I don't look upon his reports as accurate. Others will disagree. So, so now we're back in the cavern, and the these two people are lying there, sort of strapped. They're strapped their limbs. In other words, they're bound, as it were, tightly wound round them. Each one separately is a giant serpent, and then its head is disproportionately large. The head is off to the side of the person's head, with incredibly sharp teeth, and is devouring the person psychically. I mean, the person experiences himself as being devoured by this serpent that's got him in its coils. And the they had been put that place there by the receivers who brought them in, who carry things and perform all these kind of manual functions. And I remember I'm standing here, and the woman is beside me, and the two people are sort of like that, not far away. I'm just a couple of feet away from them, and watching them. And then beyond, there's a couple of very grim-looking, very particularly grim-looking receivers who seem to be even taller than usual. That may have been my heightened in imagination. They looked like receivers. I mean, they obviously were. No emotion of any kind. That's the fundamental thing about them. They never show any emotion. You see, they're doing their job. They're programmed only to do their job, not to feel anything or to make any kind of judgments. They're completely just automatons.
Mhm.
And and so then there these two kind of like metal windows slide away, and the wall beyond the feet of the two people who are side by side, the two holes are revealed in the wall, and you can see into them that it leads to some kind of chute. This is eerily like the kind of experience you have in a crematorium, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's no flame or anything.
Mhm.
And so then they they kind of tilt the beds, and these two men with their wraparound serpents slide down the chutes, the brief chutes into the big chute, and they plunge down into the depths. That is called the pit because it is in the depths. And just so that I knew more about what this really meant, my woman transported me through the imaginary wall to where we were hovering directly above the descending chute so that I could see down the chute. She said, "We can't go down there, but I just want you to see
Mm-hmm.
how far down this chute goes." And it's kind of lit a bit along the way. So it wasn't just blackness.
Mm-hmm.
You could see the chute as far as you could resolve with whatever kind of eye I was using, some kind of spiritual eye, I guess. And it looked like it was miles and miles down. You couldn't see the bottom. It just narrowed to the point where you couldn't see that it was a chute any longer. And she said it goes into the uttermost depths, and there's no escape. It's the ultimate confinement. Nobody can ever escape. And I said, are they being devoured by constantly, forever by their serpents? Oh, well, those serpents are just temporary, she said. When they get down there, they're being devoured by many creatures. And apparently, what happens um, when they get really down there is for the rest of eternity, or whatever, however long eternity is, um, they are constantly conscious of being devoured by other creatures. The creatures that would most horrify them, you know, sort of insects and snakes and all that kind of thing, all eating them. And so the ultimate horror is to feel yourself being continuously devoured, but then growing back so that you continue to be continuously devoured. The horror of yourself being devoured forever. Some kind of awareness of this process must have been behind the legend of Prometheus, because he was chained to a rock. An eagle came. In fact, the earliest form of the myth has something else that's not an eagle. I can't remember what that is just at the moment. This myth's something that goes way back before ancient Greece because it survives also in the Caucasus, uh, and which is where Prometheus was meant to be. So the eagle comes and devours his liver and then flies away again. And then the during the day the liver grows back. Strangely enough, livers do grow back. If you cut a piece out of the liver in an operation, it will grow back to the original size within 7 days.
Wow.
I've been told that by a liver surgeon.
Hmm.
It's quite fantastic. The liver is a kind of supernatural organ. And so then the eagle comes back and he eats the liver again while he's conscious and he watches the eagle eating him. So I think it's the same thing. You see, the ancient peoples had more direct contact with these kind of experiences that I'm relating to you because they were shamans and seers and they did this all the time.
Mhm.
And I suppose they were fed by the local people. They didn't have to go out for a job and they might have a hut in a cave and didn't have to pay rent. Who knows? Or they were priests living in temples. There would come with the temples again. And so um, they must have known all this kind of stuff that I'm telling you and embodied it in the very archaic myths that survive. So by the time classical Greek writings were coming along, these guys were still mostly very far in the past, but the knowledge was preserved by some of the priests, uh, and it must have been, and a lot of it to today, as with, for instance, this business of burning the incense. So then the woman said to me, um, "You must tell people about what I've shown you. I've shown it to you for a purpose, specifically so that you tell everybody. Everybody must know that this is what happens." I said, "Well, what about the ones who aren't quite irredeemably evil?" And so she later showed me what happens with them. So now that's all I intend to say about the pit.
Mhm.
Now that's the part of the other world that people intuitively know the most about because there is a kind of archetypal fear and dread of hell, which I think goes back as an ancestral memory hundreds of thousands of years through our caveman days and so on, uh, that we've always somehow known through the shamans that this was what happens if you're really bad. And that fear exists today. You get, look at all the horror movies, you know,
Mm-hmm.
people are at some subliminal level deeply aware of this great fear that they could go to the pit. But that's enough about the pit. So now, what are the other two portions of the afterlife? I guess we use that term, or the other world, we can call it, which is an entirely plasma world. So the there's the higher part, which is what we call heaven. Now, I wasn't taken there. Uh, Casual tourism is not allowed, but everything's wonderful in there, and it's very light, but it's not just people sitting around enjoying themselves. A lot of work has to get done there, and so I'm now going to tell you about where between 85 and 87% of humans go when they die, and that's the middle regions, because only about 5% of people go to heaven, because they're really good, saintly people. And a lot of those are people who die young. You know, we often say, "Oh God, she was too good to live. She died young because she was just too good for this world." And that is often true. That there's no point them going on living because they're completely good. So, and they're not turning bad, so they might as well go back to where they came from. And there's no point in their remaining here. I do believe, on the basis of what I've learned, and this was not my inclination before, I do believe that these tragic deaths, as we view them, of people who we call too good to live, so they're always the saintly people who die young. It's for that very reason that they die young. It's bad for those who, like us, who are left behind. I've known some. I knew a young girl whom I used to visit, who was bedridden for her life. She had the most terrible illnesses, and she died young. But she was like an angel, and we've all known children, mostly girls, who've been angelic, truly angelic. You must have known some, even if only in your childhood. And they are the ones, they make a large proportion of the 5% of humans who go direct to what we call heaven. There are much, much fewer adults because, we're fighting against the evils of this world, and not everybody remains saintly. So it's quite difficult to qualify for going straight to heaven. Maybe the nuns and the monks think they do, but I have doubts about the the monkish and nunnish lives. I had a girlfriend who became a monk, a nun, and a very close friend who became a monk, both in closed orders. So I have direct knowledge of this. Anyway, the middle regions are universally called the gray regions. The reason being that you don't have perfect light there. You have different gradations. Now it's a huge, 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 huge uh, place. It's got hundreds of millions or billions of people in it. Well, I sometimes jokingly say it's got billions of dead people. Well, of course they are dead people from our point of view, but they don't think they're dead. Well, they know they're not because they're still alive, aren't they?
Mhm.
So when we speak about dead people, we're actually incorrect in every instance because everybody who has done what we call dying is very much still alive, somewhere, doing something in some level or another. And those of us who are very fortunate have never met one of the irredeemably evil ones. That would be like a mass killer, that kind of thing.
I was thinking like Jimmy Savile
Oh, yes, definitely.
or Pol
Oh,
Pot or
down
Vlad
there.
Taylor.
Those kind of people, yes, absolutely, absolutely. They are really irredeemably evil. Yes, that's a good example. You can be quite sure, because I've never met anybody remotely that kind of bad in the middle regions. And so then I've mostly spent my time going to these middle regions, which they call the gray regions, and they are artificially constructed. This is like a huge artificial hollow sphere. Um, it's not so easy to describe, but it's covered by a dome. You see, it's enclosed. There's no sun, there's no moon, no stars, no sky. There are no clouds, there's no weather, and there's no rain, and there's no fog, nothing. But there is ambient light, you could describe it, evenly spread light emanating downwards from this dome. Now, the 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 gray regions seem to they have so many regions and so many levels. I would say there's got to be at least 1 million levels. So I've only, even though I've been going there every night for 30 years, um, it's only a tiny, tiny fraction that I've seen. The only regions, because they seem to separate out people of different cultures and languages. I've only ever been to the English speaking and a bit to the German speaking um, gray sections of the gray regions. I've never been to a French section or a Chinese section. And but I was taken by my guide specifically, walking along as if on a kind of featureless plain. and we came upon a walled city, like an old ancient walled city, um, and with a huge gate in it. I would say, uh, judging in terms of Earth experience, it was as if the gate and the wall were maybe as far away as the other side of a football field from me. And we couldn't go in. I said, "What's that?" Because just beyond the gate, I saw a giant mosque, um, looking very like the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, really huge. And I said, "What's that?" She says, "We call that the Mosque of Entry." She said, "All those people there you can see going through the gate, they're all very devout Muslims. And and they don't want to be with other people. They only want to be with each other. And they want to be in a Muslim heaven, which is what they think it is. So we cater to that. Um, she didn't use the word cater. Um, and she said, so we've constructed this place ever since there were these Muslims, and and in order to make them feel happy and that they're at home and content, and not get them all anxious and worried. When they go through the gate, they enter this gigantic mosque, and they think, "Ah, you see, everything we thought is true. We're being brought into the heavenly mosque." And in a sense, they are. They're being brought into their heavenly mosque. And this has all been done to make them just be happy and get on with being Muslims together, which is all they want because they don't want to have to, in the other world, mix with um, um, unbelievers, you know. I'm talking about the very devout Muslims.
Mhm.
I don't know if any Muslims who aren't devout don't go there. I wasn't told any of that. But it's the ones to whom it really matters.
Mhm.
Their belief is so ferocious in the type of thing they've been told that this is their paradise, you see. And they enter their paradise through the Mosque of Entry. I thought that was a very clever arrangement. She said, they absolutely do not want to mix with anybody else, so we've given them their own heaven. And she said, you must tell people this. And it's not the only heaven that caters to a particular type. We've got heavens for other groups of believers who have another system there.
Atheists?
What?
Atheists?
We never discussed atheists.
Ah, interesting.
Um, um, I'll digress for a second. Many, many years ago, there was a wonderful play on British television when they used to have plays before they dumbed it down called Anyone for Tennis, written by J.B. Priestley, whom I knew. What an amazing man he was. And in this play, um, somebody or other is in the other world, and he's taken into a room where there's a marble slab with a man lying motionless on it, who appears to be dead, like in a morgue. And he says, "What's wrong with him?" And the reply is, "He he won't get up. He's just lying there because he's absolutely convinced he's dead." So that would be what J.B. Priestley thought would happen to an atheist. They just lie there thinking, "I'm definitely dead, and I'm not going to move." Well, you got to have a bit of humor here, but that was very clever of old J.B. Priestley. He was an amazing man. So I don't know about the atheists, I'm afraid to say. It may be that many of the people I've met there were atheists, but they aren't any longer. And so um, I just have to swallow this because of acid reflux.
Mm.
You say something.
It's Did you want to? No, please. I know you've got several things that you've been writing down.
I am so curious about just this process. Like, so you die and then you are received. Do you know like a timeline of how long it takes you to get to the next place that you're going? Like, how long are you staying in this middle region?
Oh, most of those people stay there until they're reborn.
Hmm. They don't go to one extreme or the other. They sort of stay in the middle.
There are exceptions. People who are very severely mentally ill have amazing counseling and they're cured. I know this because my own mother um, went insane.
Mm.
And she had a very deep-seated mental illness. And she died. And 2 years and 3 months later, Earth time, she came to me in a dream. That's only rarely have I had what I call visitations of people really coming to me who are dead. A cousin came to me twice, my cousin Stella. And so my mother came to me. She had behaved very badly, and she was carrying symbolically a huge jar of honey as an offering. And she said, will you forgive me? And so I said, well, I'll have to think about that. And she said, well, I've been given special permission by them to communicate with you because I've completed my um, purging and and I'll soon be going on to someplace else, and I won't be able to communicate with you from there. So I asked to be able to appear to you to say goodbye and to ask for your forgiveness before I go. Now, the important thing there is that she had been completely cured, I could tell, of her mental illness, but it took 2 years and 3 months of Earth time to do so. And that's with the best counselors. But they do go to this trouble for people who are mentally ill. And so, in their cases, this is an exception to what you were just thinking, that there are these exceptional cases where they have to be shunted to one side for treatment for ages. And then by that, and they're kind of cleansed of these mental illnesses. And then they can go on. She was dressed in a shroud. So I said, this will interest you. I had this dream on the island of Gotland off the coast of Sweden, Godland. Um, and she said once again, will you forgive me? And I said, I will on one condition. She and the receivers who were with her and the counselors were all shaken by this. This never happens. That somebody makes a condition. I mean, you either say yes or no, and then she's off. So this threw the whole system out of kilter. He wants a condition. And now I have to say that my best friend as a child was my dog, whose name was Rusty. And among the terrible things that my mother did was she gave Rusty away without my knowledge. That's the one thing I couldn't forgive her for. I mean, all the other terrible things are forgivable, but you don't do that. And so I said, I'll forgive you on one condition. You have to find out and tell me what happened to Rusty. Oh, she was completely thunderstruck. Had no idea. She, this is nobody expected this. The counselors, even the receivers, were were perplexed, and they're not supposed to show emotion. So that was the end of that. And so they all went off somewhere to try to find out what happened to Rusty. Because I put a spanner in the works. She couldn't be sent on because she'd been forgiven conditionally. That's just me being mischievous again. I never go along with systems. So I
Amen.
put up the other world's system. So, okay, 3 weeks later, I was still in Scandinavia. I think I was in Finland or something. My wife, Olivia, was visited by my mother. And she wasn't with me in Scandinavia, so she didn't know about this dream, this that she'd appeared to me in Gotland, where I was studying crystal lenses of the Vikings, by the way. I even wrote a paper for their archaeological journal, and they translated it into Swedish. I was very proud of that. So, um, my mother said she always called me Bobby. That was my boyhood name, or Bob. Well, please, she said to Olivia, please tell Bob that I've looked into it, we've looked into it, and Rusty was reborn as a puppy.
Hmm.
And that's all we know. So my wife didn't know what to make of that strange message, and then the visitation was over.
Hmm.
So she met the condition, and good luck to her. I never blamed her for her mental illness because mental illness is an illness. The only thing I really blamed her for was giving away my dog. Anyway, that was the best they could come up with, that they checked all the records because they even keep track of animals, you see. I mean, we're not the only creatures of worth. And they had discovered who Rusty was and traced her, and she had been reborn as a puppy. And of course, even if they did know whose pet she now was, I wasn't going to be told that kind of information.
Sure.
So you asked the story of how long does it take, and sometimes it can take 2 years and 3 months. We
Mhm.
know that because of my being able to time the interval
Sure.
according to the Earth clock, because there's no time there, because there's no recurrent phenomenon. There's no sunrise, there's no moon
Mhm.
rise. There's nothing that you can set as the standard to measure time by. So time passes, but there's no way to measure it. So it feels as if there's no time in the other world. You're going to ask something?
Uh, and that I was going to say something that you sort of answered, that time is that could have been a lot longer or a lot shorter where she was at.
For
Yeah.
them, yeah. It
Yes.
could have been very short for them, or it could have been very long.
Yeah.
Time feels, the time passage feels different in different circumstances and for different beings. But I was able to get this concrete Earth time measurement,
Hmm.
which I think is a very difficult thing to get an actual measurement of something that happens in the other world is almost impossible to get that.
It's interesting because it forces me to realize that I guess I've always equated mental illness with some sort of a physical brain disorder, like your mechanical brain was malfunctioning in some way, and that caused the mental illness to manifest. But from what you're saying, it's something much deeper than that and doesn't have anything to do with the physical brain.
Yes, there are certainly cases where it is just physical brain stuff.
Mm.
That's very superficial. And they need an interval to sort of recover from being used to being mentally ill for that reason.
Hmm.
There are people who behave in crazy ways because of a tumor affecting their brain, and they say crazy things. There are these physical things. What you say is true for some cases, but very deep mental illness is not brain.
Hmm.
So that's the story about that. And um, in terms of the time. I wasn't able to watch observe or be shown the entire process. I know about being received and with the reception committee. And my grandmother was very psychic, actually. She would have a dream because she had a vast number of cousins, huge family network, and they all kept in touch because they all known each other as girls and together and grew up together and then went and lived in their different places, which were all over the place. But they still wrote to each other and whatever, and she would go visit them. So she was close to them all, and she would have a dream some one night that she'd see a particular one of her cousins um, um, standing, holding a basket of flowers as a kind of hello. And the next morning, she'd get a telegram saying that cousin had died in the night. So she did this many times with all her cousins. She'd see them holding a basket of flowers as a symbol that had made it to the other side and were happy. Because all of her cousins are very, very nice people. These are all very, very nice people. And, you know, inconceivable that any of them would be in any way wicked. These mostly uh, women who went to church every Sunday, very, very moral, uh, would never tell a lie, those kind of people,
Mm-hmm.
as indeed was the case with my grandmother as well. And my grandfather, my grandfather was so old-fashioned, he wore a winged collar all his life. A winged collar. I mean, you know, he was probably the only person who still wore a winged collar, but that was important to be very formal and proper.
Uh-huh.
And they were the kind of people, they'd rather die than tell a lie about anything. And when he was cheated out of a gigantic sum of money by a partner, my grandfather was an inventor and he invented the couplings that hold together all the train cars in America. They sort of do this kind of lock. You've seen them.
Mhm.
That was my grandfather's invention. And he shared his draftsman's office with a friend. And he had the application to the patent office all sitting there ready. One evening, went home. He was going to post it the next morning to file the patent for this device. And when he got back, it wasn't there. And it had been sent in under the name of his friend. And who just simply stole the thing, just like that. It sent it in onto his name. He earned untold millions and millions and millions. And my grandmother would say to my grandfather, whose name was Robert, Robert, why don't you sue this man? We could deal with millions and millions and millions of dollars. He's stolen it from you. And his reply invariably was, a gentleman does not sue. That's the kind of people they were.
Mhm.
So back to the gray regions. Now, what happens about the transition? First of all, the receivers do bring them across whatever it is they bring them across, and I don't know what that might be, to the entrance to the gray regions, which is a kind of vague horizon-y type thing. And that's where you see the other dreamwalkers coming in, like ghosts. all in the same direction, heading into the gray regions, where they're going to have adventures in their dreams, but they're never going to remember a thing about it. And thousands and thousands. It's very common. Lots and lots and lots of people do this. I'm just one of the few who can remember any of it and tell you it's not just me. It's many people. I'm not saying it. Many people have a special guide who stands behind their right shoulder and shows them things. I'm just saying many people visit and interact with these, quote, dead, unquote, people. Many. And so what happens is it's all automated. You have a frequency. Everybody has a frequency, which is how good you are in terms of your character. And it's very precise numerical frequency. And the levels, and there may be more than 1 million of them, of the gray regions are by frequency,
Hmm.
descending, ascending. And the higher your frequency, you go to the top and it's very light. If you have a very low frequency, you go towards the bottom and it's quite dark. And it's automated so that you go to the level that is your frequency. And the only place you can raise your frequency or lower it is on Earth. Because once you're in the gray regions, you can't change frequency. You have to wait until you're reincarnated and have another go.
Hmm.
And if you're very good and saintly, your frequency go way up and you go to a much better region next time, or the reverse. And so that is an automated process. It's only the exceptions, like in the case of my mother or of the irredeemables, where you actually have to have some kind of intervention. It's very, they try to make that as little as possible because, it's too much time and manpower. And I don't know who the counselors are because I've never seen them, but I think they are volunteers. There is a group called the volunteers in the heaven part who are Earth observers and working for Earth. And so the placing of you in your level is an automated thing that you're escorted by the receivers and you're left there, and there you are with other people of your frequency. It could be anybody. Very rare that you would know any of them. Now, I, I want to tell you uh, about numbers. So I've been going to the other world just about every night for 30 years. So, and that is, let's say it's 360 instead of 365 times a year. 10 years, that's 3,600. Three times that is 10,800 visits I would have made to the other world. I've never met, well, if I took a very conservative figure, I would say an average of 10 people per visit. So then it's usually 20 or 30, but I'm being very conservative and saying let's take it as an average of 10 people per visit, and it's 10,800 visits. So that means I've met 108,000 individuals. And they've all been different, all individual personalities. I want to stress that. Um, I don't believe I'm capable of inventing in my wildest fantasies 108,000 individual people. It's too many. We admire Charles Dickens and Tolstoy and those kind of writers who have vast characters in their novels. Maybe they've invented 1,000 really well-defined and described individuals. I'm talking about 108,000 minimum. It's probably easily double that because I've been conservative with the figures. It could well be over a quarter of a million, but let's just say 108,000. That's enough, isn't it? To to demonstrate that I couldn't make up 108,000 different people. No matter how imaginative my faculty of fantasy might be,
Mhm.
I just don't think it's possible. I think this is the strongest argument, really, that goes past my subjective account as to how there must be truth in this. How can anybody meet 108,000 different people if they don't exist? I just don't think it's possible. You know, I'm not capable of inventing 108,000 people who are all different. Now, you might say, did I ever meet anybody I knew? The answer is only once. Completely unexpectedly, I was meeting a group of people, it must have been about 15, 20 people, in a fairly decent level of the gray regions, and I suddenly saw Joel Sayre. Sayre, Sayre. Joel Sayre. I was very fond of him. I knew him when I was 20 years old. He was an old Hollywood screenwriter. And of course, I'm very keen on the movies. I do a lot of history of cinema things. I've done about 1,300 reviews for IMDb, mostly old movies, because I've known a lot of people from the history of the cinema, like Chaplin and so on. And so I very much valued my friendship with Joel Sayre because he'd been one of those old Hollywood screenwriters in the 30s and 40s. And he was the real thing. And you don't meet them very often. Most of them have died of drink long before 20. And so um, I said, Joel, it's me, Robert Temple. He looked all glazed eyed and he didn't know. He had great difficulty focusing. He finally said, how did you know my old name of Joel Sayre that I used to have? I said, Joel, it's me, Robert Temple. And I reminded him a bit of how we'd known one another. And he put his hand out and his finger and he said, I remember you. You're Robert Temple. I remember you. I was the first Earth memory he'd had since he died. And there I was talking to him. And because there's not much to do, there. You can't eat and drink, and there's no sex, there's no genital organs. Gender is very important. Male and female gender is very important. Don't ask me why, it just is. And but they don't have any sexual reproduction in the plasma world. That's just here. So there's no male and female in the anatomical sense, but the women are still very intent upon keeping the feminine appearance, the conventional feminine appearance, to make their statement about the fact that they are female people, and so they even have uh, busts, modest busts, just symbolically, because they don't have functioning breasts, that would nourish a baby or anything. But and they have long hair, and they generally look like they're in their early 30s, mid 30s, because you can project the image of yourself that you want in the other world.
Yeah.
Joel Sayre, he was such a modest and unassuming guy and completely unegotistical. He actually looked like he did when I knew him as a guy who by then was, I guess, in his 50s or early 60s, something like that, and a bit of a mess. Um, hadn't really done his hair, and he cigar stains around his mouth. He was disheveled in
Mhm.
life. He still looked like that. It's one of the reasons why I was able to recognize him instantly. And he's the only person I actually knew on Earth whom I met, although I did see somebody that I knew of, but that I actually knew. Um, there, I'll just explain. This was a very strange incident. There was a man called Petty Lee Fermor, whom I never met, who was quite famous, Fermor. I did know his first cousin. He was our vicar for a while. He was very famous as a writer. He lived in the Mani in the Peloponnese of Greece, and um, he wrote travel books. He wrote a famous book about the Peloponnese, and a greatly revered figure. And eventually, he died, which does happen. And so I I saw this very interesting house that was rather nondescript on the outside, but I was allowed to see that it had an inner courtyard. It was really quite special inside. A great deal of taste had been lavished on it. And these creations are all done by the imagination of the inhabitants. They make their own houses. And I thought, this guy has got a lot of taste in it, but he's very discreet because it doesn't show off anything from the street, as it were. And my guide was with me, and she said, "This is the house of Petty Lee Fermor." And every every so often, quite frequently, he holds seminars where all the intellectuals of his level come and they sit around discussing philosophy and all of that kind of thing, quite a high level of intellectual discussion. And it is exactly what Paddy Lee Fermor would have done. And then I saw, but only from the rear, I saw a man because I never met Fermor, a man I knew called Francis Huxley, who's the nephew of Aldous.
Mhm.
And I only saw him from the rear, but I knew that it was Francis, and he was going in to take part in the seminar. I think my woman even said, "That's Francis Huxley going in. You know him, don't you?" But I wasn't allowed to see his face. But it was him, and he is exactly the sort of person who used to go to these kind of things, and probably knew far more, and would certainly have gone to an afterlife seminar to sit discussing philosophy with Paddy Lee Fermor and the other intellectuals who happened to be around, because his father was, the another was Julian Huxley, and his uncle was Aldous Huxley, and his intellectual family, and he'd been brought up that way. He himself was an anthropologist. He was a very weird man. He was a bit creepy, I have to say. But anyway, he was a strange fellow, but I knew him fairly well. And so I, I, but I didn't speak to him and only saw him from behind going into Petty Lee Fermor's seminar. I never met anybody else that I can consciously recall that I had ever known amongst all of these 108,000 people, because they're all strangers, because it's just random, it's just anybody and everybody is there. It's like if you were landed on planet Earth and looking for, after 50 years, looking for people you've known 50 years ago, you might run into one or two if you're lucky. Yes.
Mhm.
Over 30 years. It's that kind of thing. And so it's not where you meet your relatives. I wasn't meeting old friends. There's nothing personal about all these experiences. If I were having wish fulfillment fantasies in my dreams, I would be seeing all the people I had loved who have died. I didn't
Mhm.
see any of them. That wasn't what this was about. And I was told many a time that there were two reasons why I was having to do this, as required to do this every night. One was on special occasions I had to tell the public. My guide woman made that very clear and emphatically kept repeating it to me, but obviously not everything. And the other reason was that it was required of me to have a complete and full understanding and familiarity with the general picture of the gray regions, because when I eventually revert to plasma, I've got a job. I've been told I've been given a promotion. That's the one thing you really don't want in the afterlife. You do not want a promotion. If they're ever offered one, say no.
Why is that?
Because it just means intolerable extra responsibilities.
Mhm.
There's no glory in this, you know. People want to be promoted here because they want to be famous and admired and all that. And there's nothing like that in the other world. There is no such thing as fame or glory from or anything. I mean, there's just nothing of that kind exists there. And there's no such thing as riches or social position or none of that. None of it. Absolutely none of that. And so I have been told that I have to know all about this region. That after I revert to plasma, it'll be more difficult for me to visit. And so I work hard every day at my writing and researching and my other things, and then I work all night meeting all these people, many of whom I don't like. I don't like going to the gray regions for most of the time. A lot of these people are extremely annoying, and you see they're bored,
Mm.
and they can spot a dream walker at a great distance coming, and here comes another sucker. You know, a lot of them in the lower down regions where it's a bit darker, where they're less scrupulous. They say, "Let's have a bit more fun," and they what they do is they latch on to us dreamwalkers. And this happens to all of the dreamwalkers. They just don't remember it. And they pretend to be demons and let's scare them and torment them and take them on an adventure and create a bus that they have to get on and then they can't get on it or they can't get off it or trap them in an imaginary house that we've conjured up and they can't escape from the house. Anything to amuse us. They're mischief makers and they're bored stiff. And so they use the dreamwalkers for amusement and they look forward to them coming every night, every one of our nights. And I guess we're the only recurring factor that enables them to feel a sense of time. We come the dreamwalkers again, the ones from England. And and so I can't tell you how many adventures, some amazing, a lot extremely irritating with these people. And you see, it was ages before I realized how they always knew who we were, the Dreamwalkers.
Mm-hmm.
One night, I looked down, and I was really shocked. I was completely naked. Well, blow me down. I didn't have anything on.
So, Robert, is the
And
reason that
but what I just have to clarify that the dead people are all clothed. They're never naked. So anybody who's naked, it's immediately, it's a dream walker. They can be spotted instantly. Sorry, go ahead.
is there a reason why you're not seeing the people like your relatives? Is it because they are on a different frequency or they have
Yeah, mostly yes. And it's nothing to do with this job I've got of having to go every night and meet all these people. But you see, it's only by personal acquaintance over decades with these people at the various different levels that you can possibly really know what the gray regions are like. It's no use having somebody describe it to you like I'm doing to you. You still can't really see it. And so I said to my woman guide, I said, I want to see the absolute bottom level, please. She was a little bit taken aback by that, but she thought about it. She said, yeah, it's a pretty good idea, actually. I'll take you to the lowest level of the gray regions where it stops.
Mhm.
We went down there, and it's as if uh, I could swear it was just as it was a concrete construction. Um, it was all concrete and sort of steel girder type stuff, you know. It was like it was the real bottom of a gigantic construction. And the surface was like concrete, rough concrete. And it was almost completely dark. It was just like, you know, all very difficult to see. It was almost dark, like a night with no moon if you're out and it's misty or something, but there's no mist. And so um, it was, they were like pools of water. And it was like a kind of sort of situation you get underneath an expressway
Mm,
where there are sort of people sleeping out and so on. But there weren't people there, but it's that kind of atmosphere of
mm,
being underneath everything and really gloomy. And then I saw these strange creatures. I said, what are they?" And she said, "Well, those are the lowest level of people that we let into the gray regions. They were like giant slugs, um, like about that long and about that high, with sort of kind of heads, and they're inching along, inching along, inching along in a sort of watery channel in the concrete in the dark. And all they could do was just inch along, inch along, inch along. That was their existence. She said, "This is what happens at the bottom level. This is as low as we go. After this, anybody who's any worse than this, they go to the pit." And the philosophy behind this appears to be that they'll save anybody they can. An example I would give you from the movies. Most people have seen The Godfather.
mhm.
You know, a mafia boss. He's responsible for countless crimes, countless murders, and so on. But he loves his family. You see, he's got the capacity of love still in him, even though it's only for his family and it's dead in every other department.
Mhm.
They won't put him into the pit. He might turn into a slug, but he's not going to the pit because he's got that one spark still there. One spark. And they know it's very unlikely, but there's always hope that maybe it'll become a double spark and then a triple spark. And he could even, over a long period of time, climb his way back up the ladder to be a decent person. It'll give anybody a chance, no matter how bad they are, as long as they have one spark of love for somebody besides themselves, even if they're the most monstrous criminals. I wouldn't go so far as to say they'd spare Hitler because he did love his dog, but because he's clearly a pit case. But with most people, if the spark of the capacity for love is not completely extinguished within them, they will be given another chance.
And that's through reincarnation.
Oh
So
yeah,
you can
yes,
only raise your frequency when you're on the earth plane.
yes, yes. You can't do it when you're there because there's nothing you can effectuate. You can't achieve or accomplish anything in the gray regions. All you can do is exist. Oh, and I should explain that you don't go on permanently in that state of activity because the boredom gets too much in the end. And I got the impression that people who'd been there for maybe 100 Earth years or something, and they just can't go on just mulling around doing nothing. And they do what's called, and this is another strange thing, going into amber.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever saw a science fiction series on television called Fringe.
Hmm.
It's extremely interesting. Whoever wrote that knew a lot, and they were getting on some very important, true information across in the guise of fiction. I can tell you that for certain. Because they have this thing of going into amber throughout the series. Not in the context that I've just told you, but it's where people become motionless and they're sort of in a kind of like ice, just just suspended animation. And I know about this through one incident. When I was told about it by my guide, that they eventually go into amber and they remain in suspended animation until it's time to get reincarnated, which could be a long time. Um, she had told me about going into amber, and I was very naughty because when I was awake one day, I because I'm a historian, you see, I have a particular interest in the 17th century, in the Civil War period in England. I've written a three-volume study of the period. And one of the most interesting people at that period was someone well known to historians. I suppose I shouldn't mention who he was, and a prominent person in England in the mid 17th century. Everybody knew his name. He's not a royal person, and so I thought I'd really like to talk to him. Wonder if I could revive him because I'm sure he's in amber. So I concentrated really hard. This is actually not this. I believe this was an abuse of the process, and I quickly learned my lesson. Um, I concentrated really hard on getting him to wake up, and then I got this image, this telepathic image. I'm still awake while this is happening. Suddenly, I see this guy in 17th century costume. Um, the the ice, let's call it ice, even though it's not ice, is starting to crack and fragment and shed from around him, and he starts moving, and he comes out of his suspended animation, and the stuff flakes away and falls away from his head, and you can see he's woken up. He's still pretty bleary, and wonders what's happening, and I suddenly realized this is not what I should be doing to this guy. So I immediately switched off to
Mm.
stop him coming out completely and walking around, and better let him go back to sleep. But I was really, really shattered. Well, shattered is a good word because that's what was happening to the stuff around him. Um, to actually see the visual image of this happening. I was shown this on purpose to warn me this is not what you're ever meant to do. But
Mm.
it helps you understand the amber process. So it was permitted, and I stopped as soon as I realized what I was doing. Um, and so, because you see, they can't just be dead forever, walking around playing mischievous pranks on dreamwalkers. That's just too boring for words in the end. You
Mhm.
can't do anything meaningful in the gray regions. There's no entertainment. I mean, there's no TV, there's no internet, there's no movies, there's no books. Um, if you could put yourself together, you could tell each other stories, but they don't bother because they're all rather dispirited in the lower part. Now, in the higher part, it's very sunny, and I remember seeing two women playing golf.
Mhm.
They had, through the power of their imaginations, what I call dream power, they had constructed an entire golf course with a few trees here and there, and it was a beautiful, perfectly mown hillside, and they were disputing how they were going to, go off to the next tee or whatever it's called. I don't play golf, so I don't know the language. And they they're having a wonderful time, and they had a picnic basket beside them. Of course, uh, they all a lot of these people affect food things, even though there is no food, and so they were absolutely convinced they were in heaven. They had such a wonderful time. They couldn't imagine anything to be more pleasant. So, sure, they thought they were in heaven. They were very near the top level. But I want to go back to the aroma
Mm.
issue. The only time I can clearly remember going to the same place twice in two successive nights was I was in this sort of old-fashioned town that it was a little bit like an old sort of German town, really. And uh, and there was a tavern. Uh, I was welcomed into this tavern, which had long, sort of oak type table with benches and that there was a whole dining club in there, run by a very forceful personality, a guy with quite a full face and a rather stocky build, um, who was like their leader. He was a very powerful personality, and all the people in his level were sort of followers of his. Um, he had convinced them all that he was inviting them to this banquet. Now they were all sitting there at the table, and with plates and silverware. The plates were completely empty, and they all had beer mugs, and the beer mugs were completely empty. But they would still raise them as if they were drinking and toast one another. They had convinced themselves that the plates and mugs weren't empty, even
Mm.
though they were clearly empty. And he had conjured up the most fantastic thing on a sideboard near this table. Um, it was a gigantic roast of beef. It was this big, bigger than any roast beef you've ever seen. And the weird thing is, it had the most fantastic aroma of roast beef just come out of the oven and ready to eat. The aroma was even stronger than you could get on Earth of roast beef. And he said, would you like to have some roast beef? I've just cooked it. And had a big carving knife. I said, but this is all nonsense. Those people are sitting there with empty plates and empty mugs, and this isn't beef. You're all fantasizing. He said, I'm not fantasizing. Um, he was very angry and got into an argument. No, no, I got it wrong. The aroma, there wasn't the aroma yet. So I was sent back there the next night to the same man in the same place,
Mm.
same people. And there was the beef again. And this time he had conjured up the aroma. And he took a slice off it, put it on a plate. He said, here's a slice of beef. If you don't believe me, smell it. And there's no mistaking the smell.
Mhm.
So that was the proof to me that any kind of aroma can be conjured up. So I comfort myself in this regard that the poor, terribly disappointed chefs can still have a science of aroma, even though they can't have a science of food.
Mm.
So they can mingled aromas and have an aroma fest, kind of thing, maybe. Because, I'm a bit of a foodie. I'm quite happy to go without food, but I worry about the chefs.
Keeping them working.
It's interesting that there are these environments within this gray region that what it sounds like is that you are kind of manifesting the world that you want when you're there. So this German gentleman, for example, created this environment that was
Oh,
like
yes,
a
yes.
hub.
Oh, they all do. You see, everybody, we all have the power of imagination in different degrees. If you're one of the slugs at the bottom level, you haven't got any. But almost everybody in the gray regions can construct their own abode. So some of them just have tents that they conjure up through the power of their imagination, or a very simple hut,
Mhm.
as if it's made of sticks. And I visited one man once. He created a lake with an island on it that was just for him, with well, lots of plants, and he had a kind of tropical hut that he lived in on his island, all alone. He wanted to be alone, and he'd created this whole thing because he had a very powerful imaginative capacity. And the higher your frequency, the more you have that. So the two women playing golf had created an entire golf course,
Mm,
and you can combine your imaginative capacity. So you can a whole group of you can conjure up a town.
mm.
You can join your imaginary uh, constructions. And I don't think I told you about Fun City, did I?
I think you did in our last interview, but I would love to hear it again.
Well, it I was taken by my guide once again, although she didn't come in with me. We kind of descended as if from the air, and she landed me in this place that she said its name is Fun City, and everybody here is an athlete. And
Yes.
she said the population is 2 million. Very precise about that. So, and I talked to them all, and they were obviously they can't do contact sports, but they do every kind of sport you can do, imagine that's not contact, that doesn't require something physical, all day, every day, and they never tire of it. And they're all sports people. Only sports people live there. These are the good sports people who are so devoted to sport that they've never done anything bad. They've never cheated at football. And they're all, the kind of people that look after horses and who train in gymnastics and all that. They do all that kind of stuff. And synchronized, like the synchronized swimmers. They do these huge synchronization things involving they might have thousands of people in a big arena because they've created a huge arena
Mhm.
for themselves. And they do synchronized stuff. And they take great pride in it and they love it. They just love it. They never tire of it and they're just quite happy going on. I don't know if I told you about the loo, what you
Yes.
have the empty one.
That's so awesome.
Nothing there, but because of habit, they know there has to be an extra little room that you can retire to, and so they have but there's no toilet there and there's no sink, of course. But when I said I had to pee, they dutifully took me to this room that was a bathroom, but it just didn't have anything in it. But they knew there needed to be one, so they included it in their great construction of this city. They had them all over the place. Each building had one, even though they're all empty and non-functional. Just as the women all have busts which are non-functional.
Mhm.
Um, but they're always pretending to eat and drink, and you get bars and pubs, and people with empty mugs and glasses. They do it the whole time, and pretend to have meals and
I
uh,
do want to ask you about animals because I'm very, as just as were attached to Rusty, I'm very attached to the animals that I've had that have passed on and the animals we have now. Uh, what is the relationship that you have when you're in the gray region with animals that have passed beyond?
it's very rare to see animals. I have seen them a few times in a context, not just wandering around. There seems to be a completely separate region for animals.
Hmm.
except under special circumstances. Um, and uh, I'm sure they're looked after, but it wasn't considered to be any point in me getting to know about the animals. I'm not going to be a vet or something,
Mhm.
you know. And it's equally rare to see children. Um, Nobody's born from from a womb in the other world. People can be born, but in a separate way with only a single parent of the opposite gender.
Mhm.
But that mostly happens in in the heaven part. That doesn't happen in the gray regions. And so um, the the children that one sees on very rare occasions are ones who have just died as children.
Mm.
And they're projecting their image of themselves as they actually were, as because they were children, and they
Mhm.
think of themselves still being children. Gradually, it comes to them that in fact that was just a temporary stage, and that they're really people like everybody else, and they end up looking like they're in their 30s. But you do see them. I don't know if I mentioned that on 3 occasions, uh, dead children have actually crept into bed with us in our house. Did I
Mhm.
tell you that?
Mhm.
No.
Oh, yes. These pathetic children who had obviously
Mhm.
just died, 2 boys and 1 girl, all on separate occasions, turned up in our bedroom, didn't speak. They were very solemn and sad. They pulled up the blanket and crept into the bed and got between us and just lay there, just for the comfort of being with people.
Mhm.
They never came back. They were just there one night and then
Mm.
went on to the next house. Um, so, children who have just died can be a very sad situation. But and then they go to the other world uh, as still thinking that they're children, and it takes a while for them to sort of come to terms with the true situation and that they're not really children. They were just in a childhood stage,
Yeah.
but it takes them a while to grasp that. So, and so you occasionally see children, fleeting children, who have just arrived, and they're taken in hand and encouraged. In fact, now that I think of it, I've met some of the most mischievous tricks played on me were by like teenagers, really, really, really mischievous. In groups, gangs, little gangs of 5, 6, 7, 8 kids. Oh, here comes another dream walker. Let's tease this one in the most elaborate possible ways. And some of the houses I've been to have been gigantic, grand mansions. My God. Um, Not long ago, I went to one like that, but it was getting tumbled down because the person who had created it had reincarnated and left it behind.
Mhm.
And it was, you know, slowly deteriorating, and there were people living in it and near it as a kind of hand-me-down.
Mhm.
Um, and that was in quite a high level, which was quite light. But and very just a few nights ago, I was about to enter a small house, and there was a man. There was a porch in front of it, like you have in the States. Not so much over here. Porches, front porches, and he was standing on this small front porch. It was quite a small house, and I was about to go in the door. I no longer remember why I was going in that door. I think I was even told to go in and see somebody or something. Anyway, there was this man. He had very sharp features, a very sharp jaw, and sharp nose, and kind of a slightly pointy face. And he looked like he was like about 50. And he came up to me very eagerly and he said, with no introduction, he could see I was trying to go into the house. He said, This is a completely German house here, you know. That's all he said. So I thought, well, I don't know that I want to go in there. It doesn't sound very congenial.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if I had to be warned that it was a completely
Yeah.
German, and it's maybe so I didn't go in. I turned away.
Jawohl. Jawohl, Herr Kommandant.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
it sounds like not much changes actually once you go to this place, except that you can't eat or drink, have sex, or evolve. So that's what is
Just
there a,
wait- just waiting.
you're just waiting. Interesting. Until you choose to reincarnate.
So it
Interesting.
is a choice, though.
Oh, I don't know. I think some people are told.
Hmm.
There are the people we call the hurlers, the ones who are obsessed with they have to get back right away,
Mhm.
and they're in sort of like groups, clumps of them, on the edge of a precipice, looking down. Oh, this is the image one has. I don't know if it's a real precipice, but this is the image they have, and they're all these hurlers, and they're all along the edge of precipice, eager to jump. They want to jump. They want to get back to Earth. And they won't talk to you. And I've got to get back. I've got to get back. Not because they miss anybody, because they want the physical pleasures that they want to have again.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it's all about. And they're all quite hopeless cases. And they're looked upon with great disdain by everybody else. As, oh, God, those hurlers again. Um, and uh, I think sometimes they do just hurl themselves off the edge into space. I don't know. But they're known as the hurlers, and there are a fair number of them, people who simply can't bear to leave the physical pleasures of the earth behind and just want to go back, and it's all they can think of. Obsessed. And there's one other type of obsessive, they're really very vulgar. They're called the humpers. What you get is, and they are the only dead people I've ever seen who are naked. Actually, it's not true that they're all clothed. The humpers are not. And you get a mound of them, like about 50 of them,
Mhm.
all together in a kind of mound of writhing people who are all humping, literally, imagining having sex. And which is why they're unclothed. It's not working out very well because there's no genitalia. They can't, but they're going through humping motions. It's the most disturbing sight to have 50 naked people uh, fruitlessly humping in a great uh, mass of just these obsessed people who are so obsessed by sex that that's all they can think of. But they're not like the hurlers who want to just throw themselves back. The humpers are determined to be able to just convince themselves that they're still being sexual.
Hmm.
It's a terrible thing. Nobody pays. Well, they don't want to pay attention to them. It's a very disturbing sight, and they try to avoid the mounds of humpers that you occasionally encounter.
And it's men and women.
Well, I didn't examine closely enough to know. I mean, it's just people. I just wanted to go away. I didn't.
And did this happen in the public square or just around
Oh,
the
everybody
corner in
could
the forest?
see. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's just a region. Everybody avoids that region because there's humpers over there.
that side of town. Um, it's strange because I'm just being put face to face with all of these ideas that I had about what happens after you shed this body, and it seems like you just kind of go into another body. Like it seems like it seems as dense as the physical world that we're dealing with, just
Yeah,
without.
you're right. The some groups of people, like the Theosophists, for instance, would call it the etheric body.
Mm,
Body. This is the etheric realm, the gray region, which is not the real spirit. The spirit is higher. The Egyptians had this all figured out. They had the Ka, the Ba, and the Ak, and the Ak could be glorified into becoming a star. All, several different types of soul. The etheric body is is a more of a material type of plasma. Uh, I mean, a pure plasma body would just be a glowing orb.
Hmm. Yeah. So
Uh,
I would,
so we are. You're right about this. I should have made that clear. I don't want to become too complex about it, but I wasn't told this. I just understand it from what I know generally about plasma and so on. That what's going on in the in this level, it's all the etheric level, the etheric plane, all this gray region stuff.
mhm,
Uh, the heaven is not etheric; it's a higher level.
gotcha.
So what would you say, Robert, is the manner in which you can raise your frequency on the earth plane? How do we do this? How do we avoid becoming slugs?
Well, by the power of love and the opposite of egotism. In other words, being kind, caring, helping others. Uh, you can do it just by being a mother who devotes herself selflessly to her children. That raises your frequency. If you help little old ladies across the road, you've gone up a notch. If you're good, if you're kind, if you're generous, but not over generous, and you don't turn kindness and generosity into something for show as virtue signaling, that's totally useless.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a sure way to go down
Mm.
virtue signaling. Conspicuous uh, virtue is not real virtue. Uh, Truly virtuous people don't signal, is what I like to say.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so it's very easy to raise your frequency. All you have to do is be a nice person. It's as simple as that. You don't have to save the world. All these vain people who say, um, I'm drinking only soy milk because I want to save the planet. My God, how ridiculously narcissistic of them. They think they're saving the planet. It's not as simple as that. They're only concerned with reinforcing their own belief in their own superior virtue and
Mhm.
showing off to others.
Mhm.
This is a stage performance, virtue signaling, and it is the opposite of virtue. So if you want to raise your frequency and evolve and become a higher being, you just become a nice person, no matter how hard you have to try. I mean, for instance, if you have a chance to steal £1 million, say, because it's sitting there and you can take it, nobody would ever know. If you can commit the perfect crime, kill somebody you hate and never get caught, uh, if you can resist the temptation for such things, that already raises your level because it means you've got principles, you've got ethics. You're not going to go killing somebody, even if you do hate him. And you're not going to go steal that £1 million because it simply isn't your £1 million. You know, if you find somebody's wallet in the street, you hand it into the police. Of course, you wouldn't want to do that now because the police are all corrupt. But in the old days, when the police weren't corrupt, I often used to do this. I'd find a wallet, I'd take it to the police station. They're all closed now. You can't find a police station anymore because they're
Mhm.
all filling in forms about whether they're transgender or not. There's no, there's no law enforcement here. You'd be amazed. The entire British public have complete and total contempt for law enforcement because there is none.
Mm.
So there's no point turning a wallet into the police anymore in case somebody might find it. because the police will keep the money. That's how bad things are. It used to be that they would religiously put it in the drawer of lost, and somebody would come in and claim it more than half the time. Uh, in fact, if you, I once came across a 10-pound note sitting on the pavement, and I picked it up and I looked around to see could it. Well, there wasn't anybody in sight that it could be, so I reluctantly kept it. What else could I do? There's no use taking that to a police station. They'll think you're an idiot and they'll stick it in their pocket. So you have to be a bit careful being nice. You can be too nice and be taken in and taken advantage of, and you can be feeding other people's criminal uh, instincts by being too nice. We need to have some degree of firmness. It's like bringing up children. If you're overindulgent, because you say, I love them so much, I can't say no to them. Well, you're ruining them.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
So everything is, well, eh, to go back to my favorite philosopher, Aristotle, he said, a mean is the best in everything.
Mhm.
Not too much, not too little,
Mhm.
but follow the path of the mean. Uh, just use your common sense and reason. Uh, don't overindulge people through excessive smother love if they're your children or someone else's. Uh, because children want to know boundaries, you know.
Mhm.
They don't want to be told they can do anything they want. They're ruined for life if they fall into that trap. They want to know how far they can go and then when they have to stop.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Parent who doesn't make any boundaries clear, or who a mother who wants to be her daughter's friend. Oh my God, help us. The mother who wants to be the daughter's friend. What a hopeless situation. The daughter does not want a friend 30 years older than herself. The daughter wants to be guided by someone 30 years older than herself who's going to help her orient herself in this strange world called life.
Yes.
Want the mother to be her friend. She's got those at school.
Yes.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I do have a tough question. And before we close out our conversation, I wanted to ask you about abortion and what happens to aborted fetuses and embryos.
Well, I don't know is the answer to the question, but I would imagine that those souls revert back to the plasma and have another go. In other words, it just didn't work out. Have to go to find another womb somewhere.
And what
I,
about the mother?
I, oh well, I think it's very bad for the mother. Now, the whole subject of abortion is fraught with all kinds of complexities. It sounds simple, but it isn't. For instance, one of the most terrible things that can happen is rape and forced conception. I believe that any woman who has been made pregnant by force has the right to terminate that pregnancy if she wishes. And because it's been enforced upon her, you see, the morality of the situation, it's taken out of her hands. The decision is made for her by the person who enforced that upon her. The guilt falls upon that man. And there are abortions which are absolutely necessary to save a woman's life.
Mhm.
And here I come 180 degrees different, in my opinion, from the Roman Catholic Church. They say if it's the save the mother or save the child, they always say save the child because they want more good little Catholics.
Mhm.
But I say the hell with the child, save the mother. You can because you can have more children, but you can't have another wife necessarily,
Mhm.
a partner, which nobody seems to get married anymore. But always save the woman. And there are cases where an abortion is necessary to save the woman. I mean, in those kind of cases, you have to permit abortion, and it would be wrong to prohibit it. But abortion in general is a horrible thing, and I'm deeply opposed to it. And especially because I've known so many girls and young women who've treated abortion as basically a form of birth control, too lazy to use condoms or whatever device to prevent, uh, or even take a pill to prevent conception. They carelessly allow it to happen and they say, "Oh, I'll get rid of it." Well, if you get rid of it, you're a murderer. It's as simple as that because you're killing a baby. There are cases where you simply have to kill a baby, and I've mentioned some. Just as if you're a soldier in war, you have to kill people on the battlefield. You have to. It's murder, but it's murder that's justified by this situation. And having said what I've just said, there are always exceptional cases, especially where a woman's not been enforced to be pregnant, but has been abused and beaten down into a psychological submissive wreck where she doesn't have any ability to defend herself anymore and she doesn't even know what's happening anymore. And these terrible situations that women can find themselves in
Mm-hmm.
and there are very, very many terrible, horrible, abusive men around, sadistic, who like to beat them up. And of course, the women who get beaten up are often psychologically such a mess that they won't leave the abuser. They go back to them. I'm sure you know about this. It's very common. And you see women like that who don't even know what they're doing anymore. They're so beaten down. They have a right to have an abortion because it's not that they were raped, or they were in a sense. It's that they were destroyed as people and used as things. And you can't expect them to be forced to have a baby if that's their situation. So you see, you have to have room for human exceptions always, because morals are not black and white. There are gray regions. And of course, the trouble is that there are so many people who will abuse any loophole. But the people who make me really angry are the girls who just think of it's easy to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
They get rid of it. They are murderesses, and they will suffer for it. They really will. They're killing babies. I feel very strongly about it. So I'll probably, if I were on X, which used to be Twitter, I'd get a million hate hate mails for what I've just said, because people are so fanatical, mostly young women, are so fanatical about the right to control of their own bodies. But a baby is not their own body. It's a separate body within their body. It's not anything to do with the right to control their own bodies. It's what they really mean is they want the right to murder a baby that's within their body, that's not their body. These people are basically demented and raving,
Mm-hmm.
selfish, and they're the most violent of the lot. You know, they'll attack you and scream at you and commit any act of violence because you're calling them out because they know they're guilty. The violent pro-abortionists. Um, and as for late-term abortions, and even killing babies that have already been born, that is infanticide. It is absolute murder. How anybody can defend that and call himself a decent person, I just don't understand. But, people don't believe in anything these days. Religion has very little effect on people, and everybody basically they're wandering around as sleepwalkers. There's essentially zombies. Many
Mm-hmm.
people are just zombies, and not just telephone zombies. You bump into telephone zombies in the street all the time. They don't know that they're bumping into anybody. They don't know who's around them. They don't know what planet they're on. All they know is the thing in their hand. The
Hmm.
screen has hypnotized them. Now, I will say something very important about that. You already know from our earlier conversation that my book about hypnosis, called Open to Suggestion,
Hmm.
was banned and was only ever seen in Britain. And the most basic technique for inducing hypnosis is called the eye fixation technique. Ask any hypnotist. If you look at that point on the wall or look at the watch in my hand or whatever it is, you fix the gaze, and then you encourage them to relax and go into a trance using hypnotic induction. But the basis of most hypnotic inductions is the eye fixation technique, whatever it's fixated on. And what is it that people are doing? They're they're hypnotizing themselves by the eye fixation technique on a small screen. This
Hmm.
might as well be a fixed point on the wall.
Exactly.
They are s- hypnotizing themselves literally using the eye fixation technique, which is why they don't know who they are or where they are, and they're telephone zombies. And they become addicted to this. It is an addiction just like heroin.
Hmm.
They have, they have to keep having the eye fixation and going back into trance again. And they literally are zombies through auto-suggestion, through the eye fixation technique, which is the most basic thing about hypnosis. Any hypnotist will tell you, even the most incompetent and hopeless and useless hypnotist will tell you that the first thing you learn when you're learning about how to induce a hypnotic trance in someone, even yourself, because self-hypnosis is much used, um, is eye fixation. And that's what it is to stare into a tiny screen in your hand. It's the eye fixation technique to induce a hypnotic trance. Literally, literally, they are hypnotizing themselves. This isn't just talk. This
Hmm.
is the literal truth. I know because I studied hypnosis for 15 years. I wrote a 550-page book about it. I knew all the leading hypnosis researchers in the world on first name terms. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to the field of hypnosis. And the telephone zombies are self-hypnotized through the eye fixation technique. You can't do anything about it. They won't listen to you.
Hmm.
They won't listen.
Well, I am so honored again to have you on the show. We are so honored to have you on the show again.
Absolutely.
I really hope that you will consider allowing someone to write your life story with you because it would be an amazing film.
Absolutely.
It really would. And I mean that in earnest. And I would love to take that on. I have to punctuate that sentiment by saying that. But Robert, thank you so much. And please, please, please tell our listeners where they can find your work.
Well, I have a website which is robert-temple.com. Hyphen is the English version of dash. So
Mhm.
Robert dash, it's not an underscore, robert-temple.com, robert-temple.com.
Mhm.
Don't leave that dash out, or you get some other guy who is a dentist or something. And and then, um, if anybody is having trouble finding some of my books that they might want, I, um, my wife and I have an independent publishing company. Now, A New Science of Heaven was published by Hodder and Stoughton, and there are plenty of paperback copies available from Amazon and here and there, and you're holding one up right now.
Yes.
Uh, I personally prefer the hardback, but let's face it, the paperback is cheaper, and everything's still in there. And but we have a publishing company called Eglantine Books, Now you might say, what? Eglantine? What's that? So eglantine is the name of a wild rose that was a great favorite of Shakespeare. He mentions it, which is the only rose that has aromatic leaves. If you crush them in your fingers, they smell strongly of apples.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So I'm very fond of eglantine, and I'll spell it. It's Eglan, eglantine, Tyne, which is the old-fashioned spelling. You can spell it with an I, but we keep the old spelling. So it's eglantine, Eglan, eglantine, Tyne. So if you go to eglantinebooks.com, you find the website where we've published all sorts of interesting things, including some things by myself. And that includes my only book of fiction, which is called The Tree's Sadness and Other Strange Stories. It's a collection of 55 very strange stories. You would expect stories from me to be strange, I'm sure. And then my book called Searching for the Palace of Odysseus, Odysseus of the Odyssey. We
Hmm.
found the site on the island of Ithaca, and we've verified that with a dating technique. That's a book. And then there's the one on the Greek pyramids. There were actually pyramids in Greece, but only in the territory ruled in ancient times by Argos. Only two remain, and they're partially destroyed. It's all there, all the information and details and footnotes, and they've been proved to be extremely ancient, prehistoric, in fact, contemporary with the collapse of the old kingdom of Egypt. I believe that some colonists left Egypt and sailed up and settled on the coast of the Peloponnese and conquered Argos from the locals. It's all in the book. And then I've done a book called Chaucer's Pilgrims, where I reproduced for the very first time the original William Caxton 1492 pictures of the pilgrims of the Canterbury Tales so that we know what they really looked like. And then I published the Middle English and then I translated it myself into modern English as well, descriptions of the pilgrims. So we don't have the tales in there, but only the pictures and descriptions of the pilgrims. So it's called Chaucer's Pilgrims. I highly recommend it to anybody who likes that sort of thing. It was great fun doing it. I love Middle English.
Hmm.
Um, I like old-fashioned language. In fact, I can write a perfectly good 17th century letter, and I can read their handwriting as if I'm reading a newspaper, because I'm really, really, really a specialist of the 17th century in England. I've done a three-volume history of that. It's called Who Killed the King? Volumes one, two, and three.
Hmm.
It's about the trial and execution of King Charles I. And strangely enough, I'm a direct descendant of one of the people who signed his death warrant, who was
Wow.
called James Temple. He was a member of Parliament and a barrister and a colonel in the Civil War. They all were. And um, he was one of the idealistic Republicans. He didn't like the Cromwell faction at all.
Hmm.
Um, they mutually hated one another. And the idealistic Republicans created a form of government, a republic that lasted for 3.5 years. It's never mentioned in England. They try to make out it went straight from the execution to Oliver Cromwell's horrible regime. It's not true. They had a perfectly satisfactory and well-functioning republic with a tripartite system. They had an executive called the Council of State, but to prevent anybody getting too much power, they rotated the chairmanship every month of that, and that was the executive branch. The legislative branch was the House of Commons, and then the judiciary was a proper free judiciary, because until the king was executed, all the judges were appointed by the court and were monarchists who were oppressing the public in the most terrible way. And and so the point about the idealist Republicans is that they laid the groundwork for what became the American system.
Wow.
of the three powers counterbalancing one another, the balance of powers, as it's called.
Yes.
That what was created by those people, and my ancestor was a sort of second tier of them. He wasn't one of the top guys because he wasn't a big public figure and great speaker. But his first cousin was the main pamphlet writer for them. He was called Henry Parker, and so between them they were the top guys were Henry Martin, Thomas Challoner, and Thomas Scott, and John Lyell, and Augustine Garland. They were the five people. And I've studied who they were, and I found their letters, and I discovered over 2,000 documents that had never been seen before. I've transcribed a lot of them and put them in the book. It's the most detailed account in existence, or probably that ever will exist, of not only who were these guys who are known as the regicides, but why did they do it? What did they think they were doing? And what was the real situation? What's the truth? The reason why it's been misinterpreted until now is that a lot of the historians of that period are fanatical Marxists.
Hmm.
And being Marxists, they want to find a classic Marxist revolution in English history. And they couldn't find one, so they decided to pretend that the Civil War in England was a Marxist revolution, whereas really absolutely not.
Hmm.
And so they've misinterpreted, intentionally misinterpreted the entire period to fit their preconceptions as Marxists, according to Marxist theory. Well, that's not history, that's propaganda. And
Hmm.
so I've done a totally detoxified true history based upon the actual words from the private letters of the real people, what they really said, what they really meant, what they really did. And as for the trial itself, I recorded its daily progress, day by day. Who were the chairman of the committees, a couple of dozen key committees that led up to the whole process? Who was the treasurer of each? Who were the members of it? I've analyzed it mathematically with numbers and percentages and proportions and who was doing what to whom and uh, and it's all absolutely precise facts, no speculation, no theory, uh, just elucidating the truth about the English Civil War period and the trial and execution of the king. So those three volumes are all published by Eglantine, and anybody can go to the website and order direct. And some of them are can be obtained through our uh, American distributor who are called Cardinal Books.
Hmm.
And we've got the first translation into modern English of a classic Latin text by a man called Silenus, uh, who wrote about the world of the known world of his time. Very, very, very funny, hilarious stories, incredibly hilarious. And it wasn't available in English. And I don't know what's wrong with all the classical scholars who overlooked it. But I finally found someone who'd done her PhD in it in Australia, and
Hmm.
she translated it, but it wasn't published or anything. And she then left the scholarly field, and she was living in the middle of nowhere in Scotland, in Australia. And what did I say, Scotland? That's some Freudian stuff. It's because I think Scotland's the middle of nowhere. But Australia, she was really in the outback. And it took me 6 months to find her because nobody knew where she was. To get so we've published her translation and introduction and notes, which nobody else would ever have done because they could never have found her. She's living in the middle of nowhere. And I said, because I worry about snakes a lot, I said, but um, you must have a lot of snakes where you live. I hope they don't come to the garden or anything. Oh, yes, yes, they come into the garden. They're all over the place, sometimes in the house. I said, well, but the largest number of really deadly poisonous snakes in the world are in Australia. I hope you don't have them. Oh, we do sometimes. Oh, better her than me, I tell you. But I will go to any length to find something like a translation of Salinas that's the rights to which reside with a woman that nobody can trace,
Mm.
Nobody knows her address or her phone number or even where she is in the outback of Australia. But I found her after 6 months
Wow.
because nobody will stop me. If I have to find the translation of Salinas, I will find the translation of Salinas and I'll publish the damn thing.
I love it. That's fantastic. Well, again, it's been a tremendous honor and pleasure, and we will let you know when your two episodes are published live,
Yes.
and
I'm editing the first one now.
also I would again love to speak to you again at some point. We could go on forever talking to you. You're such a font of information, and it's just lovely, lovely to hang out with you and speak
Yes.
to you.
It's nice to hang out with you too.
Yeah.
And anytime, I'm around.
Okay.
And but anyway, thanks for this opportunity to get the whole plasma story out and about because
Absolutely.
people really do need to know.
Indeed.
Uh, it's that fundamental,
Hmm.
and I'm just a kind of messenger, as it were.
You're a
Um,
great one.
took quite a lot of work to put it all together, like I said earlier, with my thousands of books. But the thing is that I had to do it because nobody else was ever going to do it.
Exactly.
I guess you could call it a mission.
Yeah.
I'm a missionary.
Mission accomplished, and then some.
That
Well,
guy, we could get that funny guy to appear in the film of that one. What's his name? The short movie star, Tom Cruise.
Yes.
exactly.
Mission possible. All right, Robert. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And yeah, as she said, we'll let you know when this comes out and we'll do this again.
Yes,
Very much
definitely.
indeed.
All right.
Well, lots of fun.
Yes.
Bye.
All
Take
right.
care.
Thank you. Bye bye.